Hey kids, so I just got asked a question about ghost net, and I hear you kids are doing a project on that. I'll just fill you in on what we do about them and where majority of them come from. I'm Niel Mogensen, second generation fisher from Townsville. Me and my partner own Avenger 1. I've been on Avenger 1 for 16 years now. So in our game, we use nets and we trawl the bottom and in clear country. So we make sure we fish clear bottom, sandy or muddy bottoms. We have to fish in clear country because we use real thin net. So if we were on hard bottom, it would tear apart and leave it behind, and that's pretty pointless. You're not going to catch any prawns with no nets. So ghost nets, unfortunately, is nets that have been left in the water that have either drifted in from other countries where there's no rules or bad practices. There is little bits of net that probably become ghost netting out of fisheries in Australia, but it would be extremely minimal, and it would only ever happen in a scenario where there was a danger to people. Like if we were to hook our gear up, which doesn't happen much anymore because we run multiple GPSs on our boat, we fish the same areas, we know where we can fish and where we don't, because nets are very expensive, so you can't afford to tear them apart and leave them behind. So we know where we go, we've got all the gear, but if say we were to hook up on something that's popped up like a sunken boat that no one knew was there, and that's happened before, and gear was left behind. I know a particular circumstance a few years back, one of the guys hooked up on a yacht after one of the biggest floods down in the south. They got divers to come out, dive down in the water in 25 metres to unshackle their nets, unshackle their boards, to retrieve all their boards, get all the net off they could get off, and take it all home. That no one wants to leave it out there because we realise that'd be killing the marine environment. And that's costing the fishers a fortune. Yes, the gear and the boards are worth a lot of money, so it's, that's why they do it. But they don't just go and grab what they want and leave the rest behind. They made the effort to get the nets back and stuff like that. But these ghost nets that are floating around that are coming into Australian waters, especially in the far north, I recall back, I think it was in about 2021 or might have been 2019, we're up in Cairns Cross, which is an eastern part of the prawn fishery off Cape York. There was a big ghost net floating around. So we found it with a couple other boats. We went over to try and get it, and then we realised how huge it was. It was massive. So we put markers on it, took some GPS fixes. I think we talked to customs first, because there was a custom boat in the area. Then they relayed it back to the authorities back in Canberra, and it ended up being it was like a recovery mission. So there's a boat that goes up and down that's monitoring inside the reef to help to respond if there's ever a disaster in the GBR in the shipping part of it. They ended up going over and finding this net that we'd towed into an area and anchored it. They retrieved it on board, and they estimated it was like 1,000 metres of net that was like 20 metres of drop. And unfortunately it had turtles and it had heaps of fish that were tied up in it. But it got removed. Like, it done its damage, but it didn't continue to do its damage. So as much as ghost nets are bad, the only thing we can do is, when we find them, do the right thing. Report them, get them removed, get positions where they are, mark them so they're easily found, and stuff like that. We'd love them never to come here, but unfortunately they do. Currents push things here. So in the gillnet fishery, there's regulations in place that the guys, firstly, they have a VMS unit on board, which is a vessel monitoring system, so they know where they are all the time. So if a ghost net was to pop up, they would be able to see who was there last and be able to ask questions, was it them? They also have rules in place like on-hands attendance. So they're holding onto their net no matter how long it is, or they have to run them every few hours so that if something was to swim in them and drag their net away, they would know and they'd have a chance of finding it. The day or the thought that someone goes and shoots the net in the water, goes home for the weekend and goes back and pick it up, doesn't happen. That's just, it's completely illegal. It doesn't happen, and it wouldn't happen because the fish would be all spoiled. There's no benefit in doing that. So it doesn't happen here, and we put measures in place. We've got bubbles on them. So on gill nets on offshore, they've got bubbles. I think the rule now is every 50 metres apart. So say if a shark was to bite a net in half and it floated away, you're going to find it in the different pieces. It's not like it was back years and years and years ago where there was a flag at one end, a flag at the other, and 600 metres of net in the middle. Every bubble that's on it normally has the boat mark, which would reflect back to who was using the net. On the end of the flags, it'll have boat mark and the name of the person. And in this day and age with electronic monitoring, with our VMS, also with cameras in the net fishery, electronic logbooks, we have to log every time we go to sea. We do a prior reporting, so it says where we're going. Then we report when we get back. We're held very accountable for what we do, which I think is okay. Like, there's consequences for our actions, and if we're not happy to be held accountable, we shouldn't be in the fishery. So unfortunately, these ghost nets are probably never going to stop coming, but they're not coming from our fisheries here because we're well managed and we do the right thing. And if we don't, we get caught pretty quick with all the measures that are put in place from our management authorities. But also these fishers that see ghost nets, they wouldn't drive past a ghost net because them ghost nets are going to inadvertently affect the fishing they're doing. So they take time out of their day to collect them, retrieve them, remove them, or if they can't, they report them. I still remember the one that we had in Cairns Cross. We watched it for 5 days waiting for the boat to come and retrieve it. Every day we'd go over to see if there was anything flapping around it, if we could try and get it out. So we're the last people that want to see them, and we spend the money and take the time out of our days to try and do what we can to remove them out of the waterways. So this is a set of our gear on Avenger. We run 4 nets and a little net that goes over the back. These parts here are the cod ends where all the prawns get to. If you look up here, you can see there's turtle excluders and there's bars and there's flaps there. So the black net's the net with the ground chains that just tickles the bottom. It funnels out, opens up. The fish go down, or the prawns go down, and whatever's go down. They get to the bars. If they're anything bigger than 12 centimetres wide, they can't get through the bars. It's on an angle, it excludes them out, and out they go and they swim away. They shoot them out, and then the product, the prawns and the bugs and a little bit of bycatch, the small stuff, get in the cod ends, which then comes up here. You'll notice that the cod ends are a heavier material. They're pretty much to stop the sharks from eating them out or wearing on the bottom if they get big bags. But the actual net material we use, if you look at this, it's 1.1 mil thick. So if I went over anything hard, it would tear to pieces in no time. And then as soon as it tears in pieces, I've got to cease what I'm doing, fix my gear to start again. So we make sure we fish clear bottom, sandy or muddy bottoms with no obstructions on it like that. Yeah, another thing, guys, so see these turtle excluders, because they're small, you know, obviously a turtle couldn't get stuck in there, and definitely not a dugong. Not that we see them, like we're trawling in the bottom column of the water. We're not trawling where the dugongs swim around and do their things. We would never catch a whale. They're too smart for us, same as the dolphins. But I've never seen the dugong in my whole fishing career that we've caught, or ever heard of one being caught. I've seen them when we're anchored up behind the islands, cruising past, but yeah, we don't catch them. These here, I think people get a bit too worried about this. These are our ground chains, where we call them a mud rope. Yes, they look heavy, but let's put it in perspective. They're 36 kilos on a 12 metre wide net, and that doesn't dig. If it digs in the bottom, it would fill your nets up with stuff, tear your nets apart. All it does is just tickle the bottom, and the vibration scares the prawns or the bugs to flick up to then go in the net. We don't dredge the bottom and filter them out. We actually just tickle the bottom, and we catch the ones that jump up and go into the net, because our net actually goes across the bottom about that far from the bottom, which would be about 150 mil, 200 mil. Because if we were too close, we'd get the mud in the bottom and we'd wear our nets out. Yeah. So these, they do look heavy and they look really scary, but they just tickle along the bottom. They don't. Yeah. So this is a set of trawl boards. So this is louver boards. There's all different types. Okay. So what they do is they open their net up. So these nets, there's 2 nets here on one side, 2 on the other side. These boards hold the nets open from water pressures. So as the boat moves forward, the water hits the boards, which is these 2, and opens them apart. This middle one's called a skid, and it just goes dead straight like a skid. It holds there like this. The two boards open up and you have two nets from there. Yes, they're big, they're heavy, but once again, they just skim the bottom of the ocean. On the bottom of these things, they've got, we call them wear pads, and that's what touches the bottom. We can do a whole year, if not a year and a half, before we have to replace them. So, to put in perspective, on an average night prawn trawling, we do 36 mile. I do 200 days a year. 7,200 mile before we wear out this little piece of steel. So we're not dredging the bottom, we're touching the bottom, and we use the bottom contact to spread our gear apart, but we aren't aggressively hitting it, dredging it up and digging it all up. And we also know that because we fish the same place over and over again. If we were tearing the bottom up to no end, we wouldn't go back and catch prawns. On these nights we do the, say, 30 miles of trawling, we'll stay in the same spot and drive up and down the same area catching prawns every time we go past. Sometimes we catch more prawns as the night goes on as we stir the bottom up. Hope that sort of paint a little picture of what we do, and hope you do well in your project. And if you want to ask any more questions or anything, send them through and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thanks, guys.